Next, I'd like to introduce a formidable woman, Dr. Gina Cody. She holds a master's and a doctorate in building engineering from McMaster. She holds multiple accreditations, has led committees, projects around the globe. Really impactfully, though, in 2018, she made a $15 million gift. Let me say that again. $15 million gift to Concordia University's Faculty of Engineering and Computer Science. Her talk today will focus on the implications of not having diverse representation in cybersecurity. You would not know that by looking at the room today, but it exists. With that, let me welcome up Dr. Gina Cody.
Thank you. It's great to be here. While I'm not a cybersecurity expert, I do spend a lot of time advocating for equity, diversity, and inclusion in tech and STEM fields. Speaking about gender equity and diversity at a conference for women in cybersecurity can seem a little like preaching to the choir. Yet, sadly, even women need to be reminded of the value they bring to the table. A report published by the United Nations Development Program, UNDP, 5 days ago found that globally, nearly 90% of men and women are biased against women. 90%. This is what we are up against. To be fair, in Canada, only about 51% of people demonstrate bias against women. And I know what you're thinking, and you're wrong. The 51% are not all or even mostly men. No, in fact, it is divided equally between men and women. Gender stereotypes and gender roles are deeply ingrained in all of us. This is the product of decades of gender stereotyping and discrimination from a male-dominated society. If we are going to make progress in this area, we need to recognize our own biases. We often hear about the glass ceiling. I think we also need to recognize that there are just as many glass walls that keep us trapped. Some that we build ourselves. The UNDP study also showed that while biases have improved in some countries, they have worsened in others. So we cannot take progress for granted. We can be blinded by the progress we have made and lulled into a false sense of security. During my career as an engineer and then as the president of a national engineering consulting firm, I was often the only woman in the room. I remember attending a conference in Toronto. There were 700 attendees. I was the only woman. And when the MC started the conference, he said, "Lady and gentlemen." As company president, my assistant would transfer calls to me from people who were looking to speak with the boss. And when I would answer the phone, they would again ask to talk to my boss. And then I would say, "I am the boss." They were doubtful. So I would say, "Look, I have a PhD in building engineering. How can I help you?" That almost got their attention, if not their respect. But the point, of course, wasn't that they weren't doubting my education. They were doubting my competency as a woman. For them, women weren't engineers, and women weren't the boss. Yet part of the reason was that they had never encountered women engineers and bosses before. I'm talking about 40 years ago, 30 years ago. To close the gender gap, to change the status quo, we need more women role models and leaders in these fields. It's time to create a new normal and retire old ones. Yet, closing the gender gap is more than just a moral and ethical imperative. The world is in the midst of fourth industrial revolution. Our revolution is about connectivity between existing, evolving, and new technologies. We see this in the rapid convergence of IT and OT. And as the lines between the physical and digital world blurs, the importance of cybersecurity becomes paramount. By creating smart buildings, smart transportation, smart grids, and smart cities, we are increasing the number of attack surfaces. Preserving the security of our systems is becoming harder by the day. And the big part of the challenge is the sheer amount of new products and services that are being created. Companies are continually trying to develop the next glossy gadget, app, or service with security a distant afterthought. Another obstacle is simply a lack of human resources. According to research by Cybersecurity Ventures, we will be short 3.5 million cybersecurity workers by 2021. This is a large number. To put that in perspective, that's more than the combined population of Vancouver, Edmonton, and Calgary. According to Monster.com, the global employment website, the cybersecurity unemployment rate sits at, wait for it, 0. That's right, 0. In fact, there are approximately 1 million open jobs in cybersecurity annually. While this is a great news for job seekers, it isn't great for companies trying to stay protected against cyber attacks. To say this is a serious problem would be an understatement. Luckily, the solution to this issue also addresses another major shortage, the gender gap. In Canada, women only account for about 10% of the cybersecurity workforce. The math here is straightforward. If we want to fix the labor shortage in cybersecurity, we need more women, a lot more women. So how do we do that? First, we need to stop reinforcing gender stereotypes and roles. We sometimes hear the argument that in Canada, women are free to go to any field they want. If they are not choosing tech fields, it must indicate that women are inherently uninterested or ill-suited for this type of fields of work. How can we expect young girls to be something they don't know even is a possibility? From the day girls are born, they are bombarded by images and examples of what a man does and what a woman does. We need to update our textbooks and educational materials so that nurses can be men and construction workers can be women. And we need to make sure those entrusted with educating our children are not betraying that trust by enforcing gender stereotypes. Recently, we heard about a school in Gatineau that separated its grade 5 science class by gender. So boys were taught robotics, girls cooking and gardening. That's in 2019. This backward thinking has to end, particularly among those whose job is to be educating the next generation. This is important for both girls and boys because for the societal mindset to shift, we all have to change. As the UNDP report showed, women in Canada are as likely to be biased against women as men are. So we need to change that. Second, we need to provide quality and affordable childcare because women are still the primary caregivers in most homes. They overwhelmingly take on a greater share of the chores at home. To address this, we can empower men to take on more active roles as caretakers by providing equal paternity leave benefits. The Canadian parental leave benefits were upgraded to cover 18 months of combined leave, meaning that either partner can access the coverage. Yet sadly, the government statistics show that 85% of parental leave claims are made by women. If women and men shared parental leave equally, it would naturally rebalance career trajectory problem that we are facing today. The current system continues to ensure women are left behind in the workplace. Third, we need to give equal pay for women's work. Women in Canada still make, on average, 75 cents to every man's dollar. This ratio has barely changed since 1980. Fourth, we need to encourage and inspire girls and women to enter into non-traditional vocations. Many of us choose our career path because we were inspired by someone along the way. Without women role models in fields traditionally dominated by men, it's more difficult to attract girls and women. And here's the thing. None of these steps I just mentioned are going to work without my next point. We need men as allies. Men cannot be passive observers, or worse, active barriers to gender equality. The main issue women have entering male-dominated fields isn't that there aren't any other men. It is that these environments are often actively hostile to women. We need men who have the courage to stand up and be allies to women, and not just the women in their circle of family and friends. It means speaking up when you notice discriminatory behavior and practices. It means creating workplaces that are welcoming and inclusive to women. Yet, as I pointed out earlier, women have biases against women too. So, be honest about your biases and make efforts to correct them. Extend this honesty to other potential biases. Be aware of your prejudices towards other ethnicities, cultures, religions, and genders. Being self-aware will help create a more inclusive and welcoming workplace. Diversity is particularly important for the field of cybersecurity because geography and physical borders mean very little in the digital world. So, wars are now being fought in cyberspace. The winners are those who are the most imaginative and creative. And studies show that diverse teams are significantly more creative. Diversity comes in many different forms: ethnicity, nationality and culture, gender, age, sexual orientation, personal and professional backgrounds, and the list goes on and on. Our lives are increasingly defined by technology, and there are consequences when the teams producing the technology only represent one segment of the society. Computer scientists and engineers and IT specialists of all backgrounds, people like you, are designing and creating the tools that will shape the world of tomorrow. Your vision and decisions will influence how we communicate, travel, and live. This is a huge responsibility because we all have different relationships to technology. Wealth, gender, geography, and culture all affect access to technology. Yes. Communication. Yet, it can also restrict, it can create echo chambers and silos of thoughts and ideas. In other words, technology can empower some and restrict others, and this can be entirely unintentional. For example, imagine a team of young, healthy engineers are tasked with designing a pedestrian traffic light. Do you think they will consider the amount of time that is needed for an elderly person or someone with a physical disability to cross? Will they consider the needs of the visually or hearing impaired? A study published last year in the Washington Post and the Guardian found the safety features in cars are designed for men. The crash test dummies that are used to assess a vehicle's safety features are based on the size of the average male. So this leads to women being nearly 50% more likely to be injured, seriously injured, and more than 70% more likely to suffer minor injuries in a crash than men. 50% and 70% for minor injuries. Why? Because they were designed by men for men. They weren't trying to make life difficult for women. They just didn't consider it. From the height of seat belts, the positioning and the strength of airbags, everything is calibrated for men. Cybersecurity is a field that is also vulnerable to unconscious or even conscious biases. We have all heard examples of AI taking on the biases of the programmers or of learning bad behaviors, as was the case of Tay, Microsoft's failed chatbot. There's also the case of Compass, Correctional Offender Management Profiling for Alternative Sanctions. That's the acronym, Compass. It's a computer program used by courts in the United States to flag defendants who are likely to reoffend. An investigative report done by ProPublica found that under this system, using this program, Black defendants were wrongly flagged at nearly twice the rate of white defendants, making a notoriously discriminatory justice system even more so. A recent study by the United States National Institute of Standards and Technology found that a majority of face recognition algorithms in use were racist. The study showed that Asian, African American, or indigenous faces resulted in much higher false positive matches than Caucasian faces, sometimes by a factor of 10 or 100 times more. This matters because law enforcement increasingly rely on this technology to identify criminals or security threats. So this means that visible minorities are far more likely to be falsely arrested or detained than white people. The study also showed that facial recognition technology that was designed in Asia produced few differences in false positive between Asians and Caucasians. So that showed the diversity of the teams. While the dangers of inequality and lack of diversity in cybersecurity are many, there are some good news for women. A recent study by ISC2 found that women in cybersecurity are younger, boast more education, and are moving into senior leadership positions at higher rates than their male counterparts. And while women in general still get paid less than men, this gap is smaller in younger age groups and for women in senior positions. To the point where millennial women making more than $100,000 have overtaken their male counterparts. More good news. It turns out that diversity is not just good for creativity, it's also smart business. A report by McKinsey & Company found that companies with greater gender diversity in executive positions were up to 21% more profitable than their male-dominated counterparts. Those companies with greater ethnic diversity were up to 33% more profitable than less diverse competitors. These are big numbers. If we don't embrace diversity and promote inclusion, then inequality will continue to grow and divide us. This is a challenge that requires all of us, women and men. This is a challenge that requires collaboration across the public and private sectors. Canada needs strong role models to step up and lead the way. That's why I made my gift to Concordia University in Montreal, and why I continue to be an advocate for change. In 2018, Concordia's Faculty of Engineering and Computer Science was renamed Gina Cody School of Engineering and Computer Science, the first faculty named after a woman. And it's the first of its kind internationally. Why do we have to wait till 2018? This is late. A significant portion of my gift was to support equity, diversity, and inclusion, or EDI, initiatives at the Faculty of Engineering and Computer Science, which includes a major cybersecurity component. We need women in these programs. With 70+ dedicated cybersecurity researchers under the leadership of Professor Dababi, a world-renowned expert in the field, and more than 1,000 alumni recognized as cybersecurity specialists and experts, EDI initiatives at Concordia can have a serious impact on the cybersecurity field in Canada. I take courage and strength seeing all the bright and talented, diverse women and men here today. You are breaking down barriers and leading the social transformation. You are the reason I am optimistic about the future. Together, we can build a better, more equal, and just society. Thank you. Thank you.